Ugg here with Two Salt Travel, and I'd like to show you how to use a slip bobber on your fly rod to catch trout holding very deep in water up to 25 feet. Unlike indicators, which attach to the line, the slip bobber works exceptionally well nymphing at extreme depths. You can set the depth that you want the flies to suspend off the bottom and still be able to cast these very long nymph rigs, because the bobber will slide almost all the way down the leader when you strip in line to make a cast. With this setup, you'll have the confidence in knowing that once you set your depth, the bobber will return the flies to the exact same strike zone with each additional cast you make until you decide to change it. You'll also land more fish as well. Since the bobber slips every time, you don't have to worry about it hanging up on the line while fighting a fish or trying to land it. Slip bobber rigs work great on lakes and reservoirs while fishing from a boat. Try it during the hot summer months when fish hold deep. Next, let's take a look at what you'll need to build the rig. Assuming that you already have your fly rod outfit, which includes the rod, the reel, the fly line, and the backing, you're going to need to purchase a few things in order to build this rig. And I'll start with the leader material. I like to use Amnesia memory-free mono. This is the 15-pound test. The thing that I like about Amnesia is that when you stretch it initially, it doesn't retain its stretchiness, which is important when you're nymphing deep. You want to come in direct contact with these fish immediately when you set the hook, and you don't want the line stretching a little bit, every time you do that. So Amnesia is really good. If you can't find Amnesia, I've also found that Berkley Trilene XT, the XT stands for extra tough. You can find it in stores like Walmart, and it makes for a really good substitute. The next thing you're going to need is the bobber stop, and there's a number of different styles of bobber stop out there. There's the 4-hole tab kind, and there's the dog bone tab kind, and then there's the pre-rigged strings that you thread onto your line and then tighten down. But I like these Mack egg style bobber stops that you thread onto the line. There's two parts to it. There's the little rubber stopper, and then it also comes with a bead. And the thing that I like about this is that the bead has a large opening that you can pass the line through, and it allows the bead to slide up and down the line very easily, which is important. You don't want it hanging up as it slides up and down the line. This is the 4 to 8 pound version, but I found that it works good with the diameter on the 15-pound test as well. Next, you'll need the slip bobber itself, and this is the Thill Classic Float. You want to make sure you get the slip kind, not the spring style bobber. And basically you just want it so that you can pass the line through from end to end. And you're going to modify this bobber by cutting this end off and getting rid of that smaller diameter opening so that it looks a little bit something more like this one here, where I've cut the end off and now I have a uniform diameter from end to end. That'll just allow for this slip bobber to slide up and down the line more easily. Next, you're going to need a tippet ring, or I've been using these split rings. This is a size 3. Basically, you just want a ring that's big enough so that it's not going to pass through the bobber itself. And below that, you're going to attach a barrel swivel. And you don't need anything giant, just as small as you can get. This is a size 10 barrel swivel, and this is the nickel colored one. I like that a little bit better than the brass ones. I just feel like they're not as shiny in the water. And above the barrel swivel, you're going to attach some split shot. You can also use egg sinkers, but I like to attach the shot directly to the line. I find that when I'm casting it, it doesn't tangle as easily. And I've also chosen a pretty heavy one in the 3/0. I just want those weights to go down quickly so that it pulls the line through the slip bobber and the bead. And then finally, from the barrel swivel to your flies, you're going to want to use some 4X fluorocarbon. This is the Rio Tippet. And next, let's look at what that rig looks like when it's assembled. Okay, so I've measured off 16 feet of the mono leader material, and that is moving from the fly line here all the way down through the rig here to the flies. And on one end of this I have tied a double surgeon's loop, and then I've attached it to the fly line here using a loop-to-loop connection. The next thing I did was I put on 2 of the rubber bobber stops. You can slide these up and down the line individually, and then when you have 2 of them together, it really locks it off on the line. That way you know when you set your depth, you know that it's not going to slide on its own when you're casting or when you're fighting a fish, as these stoppers move through the rod guides on their own. Then I put one of the little beads that came in that set onto the line. I threaded it on, and you can see that it just moves up and down that line very easily, as does the slip bobber itself. It can slide up and down this line freely until it comes up and hits this rubber bobber stop, and then it won't pass anymore. That allows you to set the depth that your flies will suspend off the bottom, and it'll reach that same depth every cast. At the other end of that leader, I tied on a tippet ring, or a split ring in this case, using a 4-turn clinch knot. And on the other end of that tippet ring, I added another section of this 15-pound mono, just about 3 feet long, to give some separation between the slip bobber and the barrel swivel. You just don't want this bobber sliding all the way down to the weights when you're casting. That way it tangles really easily when you do that. And this is an important feature of this rig when you're casting it with a fly rod, is to keep that separation between the weights and the slip bobber. I attached 3 split shot to the line. I just want to ensure that that the line passes through the slip bobber as the weights are going down to the bottom. I just want to make sure that that goes down quickly so that this bobber will get to the bobber stop in the shortest amount of time. Off of the barrel swivel there, I have attached a section of fluorocarbon tippet to the first fly. I like to use like a 3-foot section, and then if I'm going to add a second fly, I might use a 2 or 3 foot section of that 4X fluorocarbon between the flies. And this gives you a rig that's approximately 23 to 24 feet in length, and it'll allow you to nymph in water that is very deep. Next, let's go out on the water and see how this rig works in action. Alright, here we are on Stagecoach Reservoir. It's a beautiful morning in late summer. I'm out here in the middle of a chromatid hatch, and I've got the boat anchored up in 21 feet of water, and fish have been pinging on the sonar. I've located some fish. They're right off the bottom and 21 feet. And I've set my depth for the bobber using my hemostats to find the bottom. And I set that bobber so that it's going to suspend those flies about 2 to 3 feet off the bottom. And I'm fishing with a couple of chromatids. I've got top fly, I've got a bomber chromatid, and then on the bottom I've got a collaborator chromatid. And so let's see if we can catch some of these fish, all right? I use a what I call a flip-flop cast. It's really a water haul cast, but I do that so that I don't tangle these flies around the bobber and the weights. And the bobber is now sliding up the line as the weights go down until it reaches the bobber stop. On lakes that have blue-green algae here at the surface, you might have to kind of assist that along as it gets kind of gummed up in there by doing sort of an upward mend with the rod tip. And when the weights get down as far as they're going to go, the bobber will hit the stop and stand up, and then you know that your flies are beginning to settle down into that strike zone. And so at this point I want to be ready with my rod hand and my stripping hand on the line, and I have the rod tip low with a direct line to the bobber. In case that goes down, I can come in direct contact with these fish by quickly lifting up high with my rod hand and getting my stripping hand up there and stripping in to keep pressure on the fish. Once the flies have really settled in there, I might give it a little bit of action by giving it some short, quick strips, 1 to 2 inch strips, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 times in a row, and then right there, the fish took it on the strip. But a lot of times too, they like it when it's just sitting there. So that didn't take very long. You notice how I got the rod tip high quickly and got my stripping hand up there to strip in the excess line as the fish rocketed to the surface. There he's doing some more jumps, which is a lot of fun. These rainbows here are very acrobatic. And strong, too. Don't want to strip in much more because I'm at the position where the bobber won't go down anymore. And I don't really want to overplay this fish. So I'll try and get him into the net as quickly as possible. Alright, he ate the collaborator. I'll just show you what these fish look like. Okay, let's look at another example of that hook set and how the slip bobber works in action. Boom, there the fish ate the fly, the bobber went down. I came up very quickly with my rod hand, getting the rod tip high, and there you can see that the bobber did its job by slipping all the way down to the tippet ring, which allows me to strip in all of that line very quickly as the fish rocketed to the surface. And that's really the feature to this rig that makes it so important for nymphing in very deep water, is that if I had fixed the bobber to the line, even those slip and strike bobbers sometimes don't break free and slip every time you set the hook. And so with this rig, I don't have to worry about getting that bobber to break loose and slide down the line. just slides really easily every time. And then with the bobber stops, I can, after I land this fish, when I go to make another cast, I know that the depth is set accurately every time, and I can get right back out there and keep fishing. Next time you find yourself chasing trout deep, try a slip bobber. Accurately peg your depth, it casts easy, and you'll land more fish. Before I go, I'd just like to give a shout out to the guides at Yampa Valley Anglers, especially Ryan and Tim. Those guys rock the waters of Northwest Colorado, and they're truly a pleasure to fish with. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out to me at my website, twosalttravel.com. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to my channel.